It was supposed to be the happiest day of Lydia Plath's life, a day filled with joy, family, and promises for the future. But from the very first moments, it was clear that this wedding wasn't just about Lydia and Zach. It was about years of buried pain, broken trust, and rivalries that could no longer be hidden. Instead of a peaceful celebration, the ceremony became a stage where every unresolved wound in the Plath family quietly sat in the front row, waiting for its moment to explode. Hi friends, my name is Christine, and welcome to Inside Hollywood Couples. If you love honest, emotional storytelling about the reality shows that grip us all, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know your thoughts in the comments. This story is one you're going to want to talk about, because Lydia's wedding wasn't just another episode. It was a turning point in the Plath family saga. From the outside, the scene looked perfect. The dress, the flowers, the music. But when you looked closely, you could see it. The tension in the siblings' faces, the silence that hung just a little too heavy, the way some smiles looked forced. It was the kind of wedding where you could feel chaos sitting in the room like an uninvited guest. And as the day unfolded, it became clear that nothing would go smoothly. Ethan, Isaac, Veronica, Kim, Mariah, all of them carried their own stories into that church, and none of them were ready to stay silent. The real tension didn't start at the ceremony itself. It started the night before. This is where you could see just how divided the Plath family really was. For Ethan and Isaac, watching Lydia prepare to walk down the aisle wasn't something they could just smile through. They both carried heavy doubts about Zach, and in their eyes, this wasn't just their little sister's wedding. It was a life-changing decision they weren't sure she was ready for and came. We watched the brothers try to pull Lydia aside for one of those last-minute conversations that could change everything. You could see it in Ethan's face. This wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't about control. It was about fear. Fear that his sister was rushing into something with a man he didn't trust. Isaac stood by him, quieter but still firm, showing us the same unease. It was like they were carrying the weight of protecting Lydia, even though she wasn't asking for it. Lydia, as always, met them with that calm, almost unshakable composure she's known for. She listened, she nodded, but she didn't waver. To her, Zach was the man she had chosen, and she wasn't going to let her brothers shake that foundation. Not now, not on the eve of her wedding. What stood out in those moments was the contrast. The raw, urgent energy of Ethan and Isaac, desperate to stop what they saw as a mistake, against Lydia's steady insistence that she knew her own heart. And then there was Zach himself. Even without saying much, his presence was felt. He knew the family didn't fully accept him, and it showed in the way he carried himself. But he didn't storm off, and he didn't fight back on camera. He let Lydia handle her brothers, which in itself told us something about the dynamic between them. She was the one deflecting, the one smoothing over the cracks. The night before a wedding should be full of nerves, maybe laughter, maybe happy tears. Instead, for the Plaths, it became another reminder that this wasn't going to be a wedding free from drama. And when the brothers left that conversation, nothing was resolved. The tension wasn't gone. It was just waiting to resurface when the cameras were rolling again the next day. The day of the rehearsal was supposed to bring calm, some organization, maybe even a few laughs as everyone got a feel for the ceremony. But for the Plath family, the rehearse all became another mirror, showing just how fragile their relationships had become. Kim Plath, the mother of the bride, watched everything unfold with that quiet, heavy-eyed awareness she's known for. She wasn't yelling or arguing. She didn't need to. Her expression said it all. She knew this wedding was teetering on the edge long before anyone else realized it. Ethan, as usual, found his escape in work, or in this case, his hands. While everyone else fussed over dresses, flowers, and seating, he disappeared under the hood of an old car. The camera caught him working mechanically, tightening bolts, focused but distant. You could feel it. It wasn't about cars. It was his way of processing, his way of dealing with frustration and grief without letting it explode into words he knew wouldn't help. Isaac joined him, quietly supportive, not saying much, but just showing up in solidarity. It was one of those small but telling gestures that reminded viewers that loyalty doesn't always have to be loud. Meanwhile, the other family members moved through the motions of the rehearsal with visible strain. Smiles were tight, words measured. Everyone was aware of the undercurrents, the whispered side comments, the glances exchanged, the invisible walls of tension separating some of the siblings and extended family. You could see the cracks forming in real time. The rehearsal, instead of preparing them for the big day, revealed just how much had been left unresolved. Veronica, in particular, brought her own storm to the rehearsal. Her jealousy and discomfort with Tegan, and even the extended relationships in the family, created a palpable energy of conflict. She wasn't subtle, and she didn't try to hide it. Her body language, the sharpness in her voice, the way she positioned herself, it all spoke to a simmering resentment that had been building for months, if not years. And then there was Mariah, attempting a small act of peace, slowly trying to bridge the divide. She ved cautiously, unsure if Veronica would even receive her effort. For a moment, you felt hope. Maybe, just maybe, someone could de-escalate the tension before the wedding. But with the Plaths, hope is fragile. One misstep, one word spoken the wrong way, and it could all collapse. By the time the rehearsal ended, it was clear that this wedding was not going to be smooth. The cracks were no longer subtle. They were glaring. The family wasn't ready to put aside their differences, and Lydia's choice to marry Zach remained a dividing line that no one could cross. The rehearsal wasn't just practice for a ceremony, it was a preview of the emotional battlefield the wedding day would become. Wedding morning arrived with all the expected excitement, but for the Plaths, excited was a complicated word. The air was heavy with anticipation, but also with unspoken tensions. Lydia, glowing in her dress, seemed to float above it all. You could see the radiance, the joy, but also the careful control in her movements. She knew what she wanted, and nothing, including her family's doubts, was going to shake her resolve. Hi friends, I'm Christine, and welcome back to Inside Hollywood Couples. Today, we're breaking down Lydia's wedding chaos on Welcome to Plathville Season 7, Episode 9. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss a breakdown like this. And let me know in the comments what you thought of this wedding. You'll want to tell us how intense it got. As preparations continued, the camera captured every subtle interaction. Ethan was already on edge. His love for Lydia was undeniable, but so was his skepticism about Zach. Driving her to the ceremony in the vintage car he had painstakingly rebuilt, Ethan's presence was more than a ride. It was a statement. When Lydia joked, "You're taking me for a ride?" his response, "Yeah, I'm taking you home," landed differently than he would have for anyone else. There was a weight in that phrase, a reflection of his desire to protect his sister, and a reminder that he wasn't fully on board. Across the grounds, the rest of the family was a mix of tension and forced calm. Chairs were arranged, flowers placed, and guests began to arrive, but the smiles were tight. Every glance carried a weight of judgment or worry. Zach and his groomsmen tried to bring light energy, but you could feel that even their playful banter had a layer of performance to it. They were aware of the storm brewing just steps away. Veronica, true to form, was impossible to ignore. Her tension with Tegan was obvious, and her eyes darted around, scanning for perceived threats. Even small interactions felt like potential sparks. Micah, ever the mediator, hovered nearby, ready to intervene if the situation escalated. You could almost feel the electricity in the air, the kind that makes everyone move just slightly slower, just slightly more cautious. And then there was the subtle but powerful dynamic of Lydia herself. She was calm, centered, and determined. She didn't ignore the tension. She simply refused to let it control her. While Ethan's anxiety, Veronica's hostility, and even Kim's quiet apprehension filled the room, Lydia moved with intention, creating a bubble around her moment. Her focus on Zach, on their shared vows, created a space where the outside world, with all its judgments and conflicts, couldn't quite penetrate. Even with all this drama, production made sure the cameras captured every moment. From nervous glances to whispered side conversations, everything was framed to show just how volatile the environment was. This wasn't a wedding day that could hide behind music or flowers. The truth was in every look, every movement, every tension-filled breath. By the time Lydia was ready to walk down the aisle, the atmosphere was a powder keg. Guests were seated, smiles in place, but beneath it, emotions were raw and unfiltered. It wasn't just anticipation. It was the weight of a family, split, and everyone was about to witness just how fragile the piece really was. The moment had arrived. Lydia took her first steps down the aisle, and it was as if time slowed around her. Every eye in the crowd was on her, but not for the usual reasons. There was admiration, yes, but there was also tension, doubt, and an unspoken question. Could this wedding actually hold together? Her dress flowed perfectly, every detail carefully in place, but even that elegance couldn't mask the undercurrent of unease. Zach waited at the altar, trying to keep his composure, smiling for the cameras, joking with his groomsmen. But it was clear he felt the pressure too. The first look between him and Lydia was soft, genuine, almost serene. For a moment, it seemed like the chaos of the day had no power here, in this small bubble they'd carved out. Yet even that moment couldn't hide the truth. Outside their little world, family fractures were playing out like a silent storm. Hi friends, Christine here. Welcome back to Inside Hollywood Couples. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, because today's episode is pure Plathville intensity, and drop a comment sharing what you think about this ceremony. Could any wedding survive this much tension? The ceremony began, but it was already unconventional. The traditional "speak now or forever hold your peace" line had been cut by production, and in a way, that decision told the story of the family itself. There was no expectation that everyone would agree, no hope that all the conflicts would be magically resolved. The ceremony was being held under the weight of unspoken objections, simmering resentment, and raw emotions that had been building for years. As Lydia and Zach started singing to each other, an intimate duet before even exchanging vows, the reactions were mixed. To some, it was beautiful and heartfelt, a tender reflection of their love. To others, it was awkward, even cringeworthy, because in that room, emotions were a battleground. Every guest's expression reflected their inner thoughts: skepticism, worry, judgment, or reluctant acceptance. This wedding wasn't about a perfect picture. It was about a fragile piece being tested at every moment. Ethan's presence was still felt strongly. Driving Lydia to this point, watching her take each step toward Zach, he was caught between pride for his sister and unease about her choice. His protective instincts had been loud and clear leading up to this, from the confrontations the night before to his tense, charged demeanor that morning. Watching him, you could see that he loved Lydia fiercely, but his worry for her heart and future colored every moment. Veronica, meanwhile, remained a storm on the sidelines. Her eyes scanned for perceived slights, her judgment unrelenting. Her focus had shifted multiple times, to Tegan, to Kaylin, to anyone she thought had disrupted her sense of control. Micah stayed close, trying to anticipate and mitigate conflicts before they could escalate, balancing his role as peacemaker with the impossibility of controlling everyone's reactions. Even Kim, the mother, remained quietly devastated. Her love for her children was immense, but there was a helplessness in her gaze, a recognition that some tensions simply couldn't be fixed, even on what should have been a joyful day. Her restraint, her silent endurance, highlighted just how much the family had already been fractured. And then, the vows. Lydia spoke with calm certainty, declaring her love and commitment to Zach, fully aware of the tension surrounding them. Zach responded in kind, visibly moved, yet still carrying the subtle weight of all that was unfolding around them. Every word felt like a quiet rebellion against the chaos, their love a defiant moment of clarity amid the family turmoil. By the time the kiss came, it wasn't the grand Hollywood spectacle viewers might expect. It was tender, hesitant, yet loaded with the culmination of all their struggles. For Lydia and Zach, it was pure, a moment of shared victory over the noise. For the family, it was a reminder of divisions, of unresolved feelings, and of how difficult it can be to coexist in a space so emotionally charged. And just like that, the wedding came to a close. But the day left far more questions than answers. Lydia and Zach had their moment, standing together in love and commitment, yet the storm surrounding them hadn't faded. In fact, if anything, it had grown heavier in the corners of the room, in the stares exchanged between siblings, and in the small, tense movements of family members still trying to find some footing in this emotionally charged day. Veronica, as always, made her presence felt, and not in a gentle way. Her anger and frustration had bubbled up multiple times, taking aim at those she felt had crossed invisible lines. Even moments of attempted reconciliation, like her short exchange with Mariah, were fragile, easily shattered by a sudden insult or a misdirected comment. Watching her navigate the wedding was like witnessing a hurricane contained in a single person, unpredictable and raw. Ethan and Isaac had to process the ceremony in their own ways. They didn't get the closure they might have hoped for. Their concerns, objections, and protective instincts remained unresolved. But they had shown up, confronted their fears, and stood by Lydia's side in the ways they could. Their love for her was evident, even if the day didn't end on the note they had envisioned. Kim's quiet endurance, Barry's presence, Micah's attempts to mediate, and even the small gestures from extended family all told a story of resilience. There was care in the chaos, patience in the tension, and an effort to keep the day from completely unraveling. Yet, the truth remained. This wedding had not healed wounds. It had only laid them bare, putting every unresolved issue under a spotlight for everyone to see. For viewers, the takeaway is clear. Welcome to Plathville. Continues to show that family dynamics are messy, that love doesn't erase conflict, and that choosing your path, like Lydia choosing Zach, can create friction even in moments meant to celebrate joy. Weddings aren't just about union. They're a mirror reflecting every fracture, every tension, and every truth that has been simmering beneath the surface. So, what do you think, friends? Could any family really survive a wedding like this without cracks showing? Did Lydia make the right choice? Will Veronica and others ever find peace, or is this cycle of tension here to stay? I want to hear your thoughts. Comment below and let me know what you think about the family dynamics, the ceremony, and how you would have handled a situation like this. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe to Inside Hollywood Couples for more honest, real, and fully detailed reality TV recaps and analysis. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes, and keep following for every twist, drama, and family truth revealed on Welcome to Plathville. The day may be over, but the drama, that's far from done.